Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast. I'm just putting the chat room open right now, and sorry I'm running a little bit late, but I just got off the Dreamcatchers Talk radio show and was yakking and sort of lost track of time, so sorry about that. But we'll get right into tonight's show. I'm not a counselor or therapist, and I don't hold any certificates or anything like that. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I am a survivor of child abuse, and really it is my goal and mission to work with them and help to stop and prevent child abuse and do what we can to get the education and the information out to people and, just be another voice out here. So you have to listen at your own discretion to all of my shows, please, because all my shows are very sensitive. I talk about the topics of abuse. Abuse is a very sensitive topic, and most people find it very uncomfortable to listen to. So if you find the topic uncomfortable, you can just listen at your own discretion and make sure that, it's something that you feel comfortable listening to, right? And young people, under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. And that's because, we're all about protecting children, saving children's lives. That's the big issue here, and that's what we're trying to do. And so, at Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And so we, it's just so important that children, get the information on how to keep themselves safe when they're online, especially when there's a chat room present. And anytime, really. You just need to be safe online. And also my shows are, there's a lot of adult content on my shows, mature material. And I just think young people should have permission to listen to my show, and I would appreciate that. So we'll get right into the show. I wanted to continue on looking at, we're pretty much finishing up the Canadian Resource Centre for Victims of Crime website, the information that we were looking at. There's a PDF on there, and we're on page 12. We're about halfway through this article, actually. But we're not going to go through the whole thing because it would just take too long. But it says Child Abuse, How to Help Victims. It's under the Resources tab, and that is http://crcvc.ca. Go into the Resources tab, and then you'll see a link that says Info Papers, and click on that, and it'll take you to this article, Child Abuse, How to Help Victims. It's a PDF. And we've already been sort of discussing this for a few days now, on Monday night and Thursday night last week. But I wanted to take another look at just a little bit more of this. There's myths and facts on here about child abuse and all kinds of info about child abuse on this particular website. And we're on page 12 here. So on Monday night we were talking about child sexual abuse and child sexual abusers, right? And now tonight we're going to take a look at we started talking about why children may not disclose abuse, right? So we actually did look at that. It says, where can children turn for help? That's the next section that I wanted to take a look at. So we'll get right into this. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. It says, where can children turn for help? It says, children must always be believed when they disclose abuse. It is a fact that children rarely make up such allegations. This particular PDF is written by Hillingworth, and I don't know who the Hillingworth, they didn't give a first name or anything, it's just Hillingworth, right? So Hillingworth is the person who wrote this, and I'm just reading right from the page. So it says, children must always be believed when they disclose abuse. It is a fact that children rarely make up such allegations, and that's true. They've done the studies, for every case that's been substantiated, child abuse case that's been substantiated and proven that it was child abuse or it is child abuse. They look into the whole situation of whether the child actually, disclosed the abuse to anyone. There's only it's very, very rare that a child actually lies and makes things up, right? They were particularly concerned about that with child sexual abuse, and they did some studies on that. And I was reading this one article one time, and I don't have the information with me, but it was quite interesting to see what they had to say about that. And they said that they only found one case out of however many cases they actually took a look at, one case where the child actually admitted that they had made it up, and it was just to get back at their parent or step-parent or whatever. But they know for a fact that it is almost always substantiated. That's the sad part. I wish it was all made up. Wouldn't it just be great if every child was just making this stuff up? Because that would mean that no children are being abused, right? Sadly enough, most kids are not, almost all children are not making it up when they disclose the abuse. So it's really important to believe them. They said here, if a child has disclosed to you, it means that you are trusted to them, right? They trust you. So listen to the child as calmly and quietly as you can. Do not make promises you cannot keep. Consider telling the child that you believe them, that you are glad that they told, that the abuse is not their fault, that you will do your best to find help, and that you cannot keep this information secret. It is law that it must be reported. So these are things that you can tell the child, but they said don't make promises that you can't keep. And there's a whole lot more to this particular article about reporting child abuse, right? And it's very important that people know this stuff, right? Because if you report child abuse and you actually don't do it properly, the information can be thrown out of court, and then the child can end up back in the home. And sometimes this does happen. So it's very important that people should know. Everybody should know this stuff, because you never know when a child is going to come to you and disclose to you that they've been abused, right? So important. So this says sometimes children will choose to disclose their abuse to a parent or other relative, a child welfare agency, provincial or territorial social services department, the police department, teachers, doctors, dentists, or any other professionals, right? After a child discloses abuse, your responsibility is to report it to child welfare authorities. It says through this process you can find more services to help the victim, such as therapy and counseling. And there is also the Kids Help phone, where children can get bilingual help anywhere in Canada. So this is a Canadian article. So in Canada, that's 1-800-668-6868, the Kids Help phone. But in the States, there's 1-800-4-CHILD and Child Help, and there's a whole bunch of them. And you can generally find them just looking online, child abuse hotlines, or you can find them in the front of your phone book. Sometimes, many phone books in the front of the phone book almost always have lists of resources and community numbers for, suicide prevention lines and everything, right? So important to know where that information is and be able to access it, right? And, it says what to do if you suspect child abuse. It says caution should be used when asking a child about abuse or neglect, as there is a potential to complicate and or ruin the criminal and child protection investigations. If you suspect abuse, you have an obligation to report it immediately. Respond to the abused child supportively and caringly. It says avoid questions like, is everything okay at home? Or as a child might try to deflect your concern with a quick yes or no answer. Ask questions like, can you tell me about anything that might be worrying or upsetting you? Or when I look at or read your work, it seems like you are saying that you feel worried or upset about some things. Can you tell me about that? It says report your concern to any professional dealing with children. For example, pediatrician, school teacher, social worker, etc. You can read the Secret of Silver Horse with the child to encourage them to disclose abuse. The story deals with sexual abuse, but can be applied to all forms of abuse. It says if the child discloses, reassure him or her that they did the right thing in telling and have done nothing wrong, right? Because many children will think that they're going to be in trouble because they told, or, that they didn't do the right thing because they told, right? So let the child know that you will do whatever you can to keep him or her safe. Reinforce that the abuse is not their fault. And people can also report suspected child pornography and other forms of online abuse to local police or to cybertip.ca. And that's www.cybertip.ca. It says do's and don'ts when there is disclosure. And this is from the Toronto Child Abuse Center. It says, if you suspect that a child may have been abused or is at risk for abuse, it is not up to you to try to prove your suspicions. Trying to do this may contaminate or ruin the investigation and may put the child at further risk. So if you suspect a child is being or has been abused, or if a adult discloses the abuse, you must report this information to the authorities. The investigation will be done by experts. If you have seen or heard something that makes you suspect child abuse, remember to, first of all, they say here, control your emotions. Try to be calm and relaxed. Do not look shocked, disgusted, or say mean things about who you think may have abused the child. That's very important. And the reason why is, you want to stay calm. You want to remain calm. If a child comes to you and tells you that they've been abused or that they're being abused, you want to remain calm, control your emotions. Because if you get upset, that'll upset the child, right? If they're trying to disclose something to you that they already find very uncomfortable, and then you get upset and start crying and bawling or screaming or yelling or throwing things around the room, it will, they will quite often shut down and they won't say anything else. And then they'll say everything's fine, right? And they won't disclose any more of the abuse, right? So they said, don't look shocked, disgusted, or say mean things about who you think may have abused the child. And there's reasons for that too, because the child may love their parents, and if it's one of their parents or if it's somebody in their home, they might love that person. See if it's the grandparents or if it's a relative of some sort or a parent. And then if you go and say mean things about them or yell and scream and call them names or something because they've told you that they've been abused by them, then the child they can sometimes shut down because they love that person even though the abuse is going on. And this is a fact, right? I mean, we do the studies, I do the research. I'm a survivor myself, so I already know about all this stuff. But the information is out there, right? So make sure that you do get it and read through it, because this is very important. You don't know when a child is going to, in your lifetime, is going to come to you and disclose abuse. What if they did? What would you say? What would you do? Right? Very important to get this information because 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys will be abused sexually in some way under the age of 18. That's the stats. That's the facts. And it's pretty much the stats everywhere you go. And it's, it's unfortunate, but people don't seem to care that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will have been sexually abused in some way under the age of 18, right? And that kind of goes for all the different types of abuse. Really, it's about 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in 6 to 7 boys, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect, right? It's all pretty much right in there. 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in 6 to 7 boys. Well, I tell you, that's too many. And so how do you know if a child's going to come to you? You don't know. So it's better to get the information and learn it and, and familiarize yourself with it, right? So just in case, right? It says if you feel that you cannot control your feelings, take a minute or two to yourself and breathe deeply. Let's say a child comes to you and discloses that they're being abused and tells you what happened or something, and you can't control your feelings and it's upsetting you and you can't even breathe. It says take a minute or two to yourself and breathe deeply. And it says offer comfort. Support children by letting them know that, first of all, they were very brave to tell, that you are glad they are telling you about this, that you are sorry that this has happened to them, that they are not alone, this happens to other children too, that you will do everything you can to help, and you are there to love and support them. It says, do not say things like, how can you say those things about so-and-so? Don't say things like, you're a liar. Don't say things like, that horrible man has ruined you forever. Or horrible woman, whoever abused the child. Don't say things like, how could you let them or him do those things to you? It's not the child's fault, see? They're not letting anybody do anything to them, and this is being done to them as an act of abuse. It's an act of, it's an abusive act being done to a child. There's nothing the child can do to control it, so you can't say stuff like, how could you let him do these things to you? Because children have no choice but to let those people who would choose to abuse them. What are they going to do? You know what I mean? Like, how are they going to really stop this from happening, right? People so many times don't think very clearly before they speak and say the wrong things, and that can be really bad for a child who's just disclosed to you that they've been abused, right? It says, why didn't you tell me this before? That's something else that you don't want to say. Why didn't you tell me this before? Don't say that. Don't say that children may take back what they have said. For instance, that is called recanting. And don't ever say that, because they'll take back everything after they think that it wasn't okay or appropriate for them to say it. And they start thinking, oh, my God, I'm going to be in trouble now because I told on so-and-so who was abusing me. If you don't want to tell them that children may take back what they said. They said these children continue to need your love and support. It says be aware of the child's age and skills. Accept the words the child uses, including slang words, to describe what happened. It says some children do not know the right words for body parts or sexual behaviors. So it says do not correct or change the words the child uses. It's extremely important for the investigation that the child's words are used when telling what happened. So if a child comes to you and starts telling you what happened, you have to write it down word for word what the child says, and don't try to change it, don't try to fix it so it looks better, sounds better, or put the correct words in there. You have to put it down exactly as the child says it. And it says do not use words that may frighten the child. For example, rape, incest, child abuse, wife assault, or jail. Right, so just let the child explain to you that whatever they're going to explain to you, and don't lead them as far as the questions go, right? Very much, you got to be very careful about that. So it says, ask questions that let the person tell the story in his or her own words. So it says, can you tell me what happened? What happened next? And how did you get that bruise? But it says, do not ask questions that suggest what happened or who did it. For example, did you get that bruise because mom hit you with a brush? These types of things. You can't lead the question. You can't suggest something, right? You can't question what the child tells you, for example, by asking, are you sure it was Uncle Ted? Right? These types of things. You got to be very, very careful. So you can say, can you tell me what happened next? How did you get that bruise? But you cannot say, and suggest what happened and say, did you get that bruise because mom hit you or dad hit you with something, right? Or say, are you sure it was Uncle Ted? These types of things, right? And also, don't interrupt or add your own words when the child or whoever it is starts stops talking, right? Even the adult who's reporting abuse to you or something says don't interrupt or add your own words. It says ask children why something may have happened. Many children may think you are blaming them for what happened. So it says don't ask them why, right? We're doing the don't questions, right? So it says do not ask why something may have happened, because many children may think you are blaming them for what happened, right? So, yeah, children won't know why these things happen, you know what I mean? I could never figure out why I was abused, you know what I mean? I'm a survivor of child abuse. I mean, I tell everybody about it, but that's because I'm going public speaking nationwide, and I want everybody to know, because I'm willing to stand up and put myself out there to do it, and I really don't, have any problems with that. But I know that a lot of people do, and it's a real problem for a lot of people to even acknowledge that they were abused, you know what I mean? For me, I want people to know, because it's so incredibly sad that there's so many children out here today who we will not be able to get to, we will not be able to help, because no one, seems to. Well, there are a whole lot of people do care. We work with a whole lot of people that actually do care. Dream Catchers for Abused Children, tons and tons of volunteers coming on, and I mean we have lots of new volunteers, and I just can't begin to name them all on my show here. One day maybe I will do a show on the volunteers, but I'm telling you, we have a lot of awesome people who support us as well. People who support Dream Catchers for Abused Children. There are, and it's not just our organization, our not-for-profit. I mean, there's lots and lots of great organizations out there doing awesome work, and lots of advocates out there that we actually kind of work side by side with in Australia, the UK, different places around the world, and as well as North America, who are doing some awesome work. So there are people out there that do care, and we know this, right? But I'm just saying that society as a whole kind of doesn't want to hear anything about child abuse, right? Just doesn't want to see it. They don't want to know about it, right? And it's really unfortunate, because these kids out here don't deserve this, right? So that's why I'm willing to stand up and speak out about this and tell people, hey, I'm a survivor, so I know about this stuff. You know what I mean? So I could never figure out why I was being abused. You know what I mean? It never made any sense to me what my parents were doing to me, and it never made any sense to me what my brother did to me when he sexually abused me. I could never figure out why. You know what I mean? So you don't want to ask a child. You don't want to ask them why that happened, right? It is not a good idea, because the children do not know why they've been abused. They might have been told, oh, I'm doing this because you behave a certain way, or because you're a bad kid, or, you know what I mean? But it still doesn't make any sense in the child's mind. You know what I mean? So that's another thing, is don't ask them why or why the abuse happened. It says try to change the mind of a child who has, do not try to change the mind. I don't know why they typed this up like this, but it says do not try to change the mind of a child who has recanted or changed his or her story. Just let them say what they're going to say, and write it down exactly the way that they said it, and that's it, right? Don't change it or get them to change it or anything like that, because that can be thrown out of court. Don't keep on asking questions because you want to prove the abuse, right? You just let them tell you what they got to tell you, and let the investigators do the investigating, right? It's very, very important to not pry and not lead questions with the children, right? There's lots and lots of websites out here who talk about child abuse prevention and how to report child abuse. So, I mean, if you want to find out all the different websites about how to report child abuse, just type into your browser, reporting child abuse, how to report child abuse, this type of thing, and it'll bring up all the websites with tons and tons of info on there. Or you can check our website out. We have a great website, Dream Catchers for Abused Children, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and we have a great PDF on there. It's called a Child Abuse Handbook, and it is awesome. And it's compiled by Donna Shear and Sandra Potter, and they're, it's just full of all kinds of great information from, signs and symptoms, statistics, reporting, intervention, prevention, you name it. Everything's in there. It's a great resource, and it's free. It's a free PDF download, and you can get that from our website, dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, or you can get it from lulu.com, Shear and Potter Books. There's a number of places you can actually get that. So if you can't find it, you can get a hold of me, and I'll help you get a copy of it, because it's free. It's a free download, right? And there's some great info on there as well. But there's good info everywhere, and you can get all kinds of great information just by typing into your browser how to report child abuse, and it'll bring it up. And there's lots and lots of good info out there. It says do respecting the person who discloses. So if it's a child or adult is telling, listen to them. If a child or adult is quiet, do not try to make them talk. If they just want to sit there quiet for a bit, let them sit there quiet, right? Says do not force a child to undress if you suspect that she or he may have injuries. That's very important, because they're already scared enough, and then they have somebody who they trusted, who they're telling about the abuse, and then that person's trying to get them to undress. and just to see if they can prove the abuse or see the injuries. And actually, that is not a good idea because the child may feel that that's just more abuse on top of more abuse, right? Especially if they're being sexually abused. You got to be very careful what you're doing. Let the authorities do that. Let the people who are trained to do that. Right? It says do not show off a child's injuries to others, right? Because that can cause them a lot of low self-esteem. They might think, oh my God, now I'm just being paraded around, just everybody taking a look at me, and that can make kids nervous. I never wanted anybody touching me, period, because I was abused as a child physically and sexually and also, verbally, emotionally, psychologically, and neglected as well, the whole 9 yards. And I hated when people touched me. I didn't want people to touch me, and I certainly didn't want a stranger touching me. It's bad enough somebody in my family touching me, but then when a stranger touched me, it was just, it was like, oh my God, I don't want anybody touching me. I had a real problem with that. And so you got to be very careful what you're doing with abused children. They've already been through the ringer, and they really need some respect, and they really need some people to think things through with them. You know what I mean? And you got to think about what's going on in their minds. You know what I mean? Because they're obviously going to be having a hard time. But most of the time, children who have been abused, it's very hard on them. So I would say just have some respect for them. Just tell the child what will happen next. This is do not make promises you cannot keep. For example, do not agree to keep what the child said a secret. It is important to explain to the child that some secrets must be shared in order to get help or to keep people from being hurt. So tell the child the information will be shared only with people who will try to help. And answer the child's questions as simply and honestly as possible. It says do not make up answers. For example, if a child asks, will Daddy have to go to jail now? You can only say, I don't know. Other people decide that. And do not tell the child to keep any of your discussions with him or her secret, right? It's just a good idea, right, to be very honest and open with the child and not make a bunch of stuff up just to try to appease them, because it won't appease them in the end when it doesn't happen. Then they won't trust you because they'll think, oh my God, the one person I trusted and told has now told me a bunch of lies, right? So it's not a good idea. Failure to report child abuse. This is the next section of this article. And it says, although the reporting rate is growing, many studies show that actual rates of child abuse may be much higher than those reported. And we know that child abuse is underreported, right? Children have many reasons for not reporting, and others who witness or suspect child abuse may not report it because they don't want to get involved. There's an attachment to the abuser, and this is almost always the case. I mean, it's always, people don't want to get involved. They like the person who's abusing the child. They might have a close relationship with them. Could be a family member, sister, brother, mom or dad, or cousin, or something like this, and or husband, wife type thing. Many times people have an attachment to the abuser, so they will not get the child any help. That's what happened in my family. Even though my parents were brought up and charged with child abuse, the whole issue is that more abuse continued on long after that, and many people knew about it and didn't report it because they liked my parents. Even though my parents were abusers and they were busted for child abuse, they had a lot of friends. They had a lot of support, right? There was people that were willing to turn a blind eye because my parents liked to play cards and they liked to have fun and they liked to drink coffee and hang out. So people would just turn a blind eye to the abuse because they wanted them to come over for coffee. And they probably thought, well, if we report them, they'll end up in jail and then we won't have anybody to have at the barbecue, and who's gonna sit around and play cards with us, and who's gonna, you know what I mean? So that's a lot of times people will do that, right? It's not right. Children certainly deserve a whole lot better than that. And I mean, my God, if you suspect abuse, it's the law. You have to report it. If you know about abuse, you really should. You can save a child's life, hopefully. If you don't report it, it's just guarantees that, that child may not get some help and they could be killed. I think it's better, even though we know the system's not perfect and the system needs work, it's better to report it than just to allow the child to suffer in the home. Because sometimes they do get children some help quite often. And even though sometimes these children end up in worse home situations and foster care and whatnot, it's better to try to save their lives than to not try, right? At least they have the opportunity, where if they stay in the home, they may not. They could be killed. They could be killed elsewhere too, but at least they have the opportunity, the chance to actually get in with some good parents, good foster parents, or get adopted by a loving, very loving family. You just never know. I'd say it's worth a chance. That's why I'm doing these shows, right? Because it's worth it to me. This is what I do in my spare time, because I have nothing better to do but try to make a difference to stop child abuse, right? It's worth it to me to spend this amount of time doing this. And I mean, this is just the beginning. I'll be doing a whole lot more. I'm just getting settled and getting set up. But I'll be doing a whole lot more, locally and internationally and nationally. So we just have to do whatever we can because it's worth it to try to save these kids' lives. It really is. Even though we know so many tonight we won't be able to save. But you know what? We have to keep going with the fact that we know that eventually we can save some kids' lives. And we can stop child abuse, right? And we can stop some children from being abused. Maybe not all of them, but my God, we're going to try. And so that's, thank you so much for everybody who's tuning in, I really appreciate it. I know I've got 18,000 shows listened to, over 18,000 shows, and I don't know who's all listening, but I know, I thank you all so much for your support, for being here with me on this journey this last year, and for hanging in here and tuning into me every day, rambling on and on about stopping child abuse. Thank you so much for being here for me. I really appreciate it because I was abused, and I know what these kids are going through, and so I appreciate the fact that you tune into my shows. Thank you so much. And thanks for everything you're doing, to try to make a difference in this world and make this world a better place, right? Thank you very much. So have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, one child abuse survivor to another, and then tomorrow night, be sure and catch Elizabeth Brawley on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio at www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. And then Friday morning, same thing. I'll be back on Friday morning, same time, same place, same time. I was actually late for my show this morning too, so it's kind of been a bad day for me for being late. Sorry about that. I will be on my show tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock a.m. because I'm going to set 2 alarm clocks. Right. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye bye.